Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of Writers Infusion. I'm your host, Susan. I'm here with Jen, Julie, Dave, and Ed, and we are here to critique a short story excerpt called Sook's Cake, I love that name, by Bonnie Furlong, who lives in Virginia. Now, before we get started, I'm going to read you a summary of the short story. It's Halloween afternoon. The main character is baking fruitcakes when her sister drops by and asks her to help her fill Halloween goodie bags. To speed things along, the sister decides to stay and help with the next recipe, which has ties to Truman Capote and his family. And Julie is going to read.
Sook's Cake. Cut. Can I use her name or no?
No, we can't cut here. I don't know. I'm not that sophisticated.
Sook's Cake by Bonnie Furlong. Oi. I repressed a sigh. Until that moment, I'd been hoping my sister would pack up her retro candy and leave. I took a healthy slug of Guinness for strength. I'm making one of Truman Capote's aunt's recipes. Could you pull it out for me? It just says chocolate fruitcake at the top. I never heard of chocolate fruitcake, Linda said, and muttered something about wasting perfectly good chocolate, but I let it go. I can't find it, she said after a moment. Let me see. I searched through the pages myself. Darn. I don't understand why I keep losing it. Maybe I left it on the printer. I'll go look, Linda offered, and you can start melting chocolate or whatever. Thanks. If you don't see it, would you print it out? I left the website up. I had a feeling I'd have to go there again. My computer's in a small bedroom down the hall that I fixed up as an office. I remembered that the recipe called for half a cup of butter to be creamed with 1 cup of sugar. I had just finished doing that when Linda came back, hanging on to her bottle of Guinness. How's it coming, she asked. Slowly. I've been waiting for the recipe. Where is it? Right here. She raised the hand that was not holding the bottle, and the hand was empty. We stared at it for a moment. Well, it was here. I know. I believe you. That recipe is driving me crazy. Maybe that's because you stole it off the internet. I didn't steal it. What makes you think I stole it? It was right there on a legitimate website. You saw it yourself, or you printed it out. I not only saw it, I read the whole story, all about little Truman and his cousin Sook delivering fruitcakes in a baby buggy. That recipe came from Truman Capote's aunt's new cookbook. You should have bought the book if you wanted the recipe. How's she going to make any money if you take her recipes off the net for free? Poor little old lady. You're getting maudlin, I said, and I'm going to buy her book the minute I see it at the store. But right now, I just want to make the darn cake. We seethed for a moment or two, as sisters do, when they're deciding whether to have it out right now, once and for all. I know what, she said. Why don't I sit at the monitor and call out the ingredients to you? Then you can help me with the goodie bags while it's baking. Because we're running out of time. The trick-or-treaters will be out soon, and Wally's sitting at home with nothing to hand out. He's terrified we're going to get TP'd again. All right. I was thinking I'd go back there and write it down in pencil, but your way might be faster. And just for the record, it wasn't his aunt's recipe. It was his cousin Sook's recipe. They found a whole sheaf of fruitcake recipes in her dresser drawer after she died. Whatever. Linda stuck her finger in the butter and sugar mixture and tasted it. Truman Capote was as spiteful as he could be. Did you know that? I saw him on the Merv Griffin talk show years ago, trading catty remarks with Zsa Zsa Gabor. You should have seen the look he gave her after one of his singers. Meow! Could we just get on with it? The recipe is making me nervous. I'm going! But before leaving the kitchen, she got us each another Guinness. I do like the dark ales. Linda, of course, will drink anything. I have very little memory of what happened next. My impression is that every fruitcake recipe I'd have read over the previous month of research was whispering in my ear, make me, make me. Mingled with these demands was Linda's voice, slightly distorted through the intervening walls, calling out each ingredient or instruction just as I needed it. Pineapple wedges, macerated to buttery softness in expensive brandy, rattled merrily into the batter. Candied cubes of orange and lemon peel flowed like fragrant lava. A fortune in chopped pecans slid in next, soft as a whisper, followed by almonds, walnuts, and cracked acorns. 3 drops of blood swirled in and disappeared before I realized that my wooden spoon had cracked and pricked my thumb. I tossed it aside, grabbed a larger, stronger spoon, and kept stirring. The glacé cherries giggled rosily as I stirred them in, and the voices called for more. Honey, citron, watermelon pickles. If I had what was wanted, I added it. If I didn't, I improvised. Nuts! I jumped, startled out of my rhythm. What? Linda was standing beside me. Nuts! 2 cups of pecans, chopped and stirred in last. I think I did that, I said, resting my aching arm on the edge of the bowl. I think it's done. You sure made a lot. I sure did. My largest mixing bowls, 3 of them, were filled with heavy, lumpy batter. Golly, and I only prepared 2 pans. Would you mind greasing some more for me? They're in the bottom cupboard. You grease the pan, line it with a cut-up brown paper bag, and then grease the paper. Linda assembled 2 pans, not as neatly as I would have liked, and brought them over. What's that green stuff? She asked, as I spooned batter into the pans. I don't know. Never mind. Keep greasing. In the end, we filled 6 large loaf pans and 1 tube pan, which neither of us knew how to line with brown paper, but I didn't care anymore. We managed to fit all the cakes into the oven, which I turned on to its lowest setting. What just happened here? My sister and I were sitting at the kitchen table, a pot of tea between us. I didn't remember making it. Our cups were half empty. I didn't remember sipping any. Linda was crunching a dill pickle out of an open jar that was sitting inexplicably among the emptied bowls of fruit. The question hung in the air between us like a cartoon thought bubble. One of us had asked it. Neither of us could answer it. A delicate aroma began to waft through the room. It smells all right, said Linda. I nodded. I felt a great reluctance to talk about the cake. There was no question of our attempting the next recipe I had planned. Even if I hadn't been exhausted from making Cousin Sook's cake, I'd run out of eggs. Linda handed me some little cotton bags stamped with ghosts and pumpkins. We might as well fill these while we wait. I began sorting through the candies. You've been nibbling, she said. Where's the candy corn? She rattled the empty cellophane bags accusingly. I never touched it. A prickly feeling ran down my spine. I gently tipped up the bowl that held the brandied pineapple wedges. It was still full. My sister and I exchanged speculative glances. Don't give those to the kids, those brandied pineapple wedges.
To start this off with something I just have to point out, that description about on page 3 with the pineapple wedges macerated to buttery softness and expensive brandy, those 2 sentences before the blood got introduced, I loved them.
Yeah.
All I want to do now is eat. I'm starving.
Yeah, that paragraph
Written
is
so
lovely.
well.
I like that whole
Yeah.
paragraph.
I love them too, but I'll tell you, if they're macerated to buttery softness, then they can't rattle. I kept reading
Oh,
and thinking,
But in the end, they're still there, so really, she
Yeah,
was putting
yeah.
candy corn in there.
Oh,
So put that in the oven,
Oh, is that what happened?
nice!
I don't
right?
know what
That's
happened.
how I interpreted it, that
Yeah.
the candy
Nice,
corn,
The big
So
question
how
is
could
what
that-
happened here.
yeah,
And
like,
I don't know.
candy cubes of orange
I'm
and
confused.
lemon peel, they flowed. How could they flow if they were cubes?
I
But
like-
good
wait,
point.
I like on page
Carry
4
on.
where, that, like, time has gone by and they don't have any idea, like,
What
who made
happened?
the tea
Yeah.
or where
Yeah.
the pickles came from.
Yeah. I
and
think, like, what
I'm
is
thinking
the-
alien abduction.
but what's
Right.
it about? Like,
Right.
where's the
Too much
lost
Guinness.
time? Why the
Sue is
lost
still
Too much
talking.
time?
Guinness.
Carry on.
All right, so I guess from a high point of view, I wrote that I
Wait,
like
high point, we're low? Is
Oh, I
that
don't-
it? I'm kidding.
Oh no. That I like a dialogue between the sisters and that they're doing something, but by the time I get to the end of the 5 pages, I see 2 women. It's almost like reading a recipe book where they've told you how they've done the recipe and they're trying to insert a mystery into it, but I don't get the mystery and I don't know who's trying to, like, who the ghost is or what it's about. I don't know the motivation for the ghost.
I don't know where this is going at all.
Right.
I have
so
no idea.
that was the hard part for me
Yeah.
in reading this story.
If they're going to use a reference to Truman Capote and his aunt's Sook, and I recognize the name immediately because you
Give
don't
the-
meet
give
too
the
many
illusion. What's the
Sooks.
story's
Yeah.
name?
What?
What's the story's name?
A Christmas Memory.
Yes.
Okay. And if you
By
don't meet
Truman
too many
Capote.
Sooks in your life, so I immediately assumed it was, and if it's important enough to name it Truman Capote and Sook and so on, there should be a direct connection to either Truman Capote or maybe they found something secret in the recipe book or something special about it. There should be a connection somewhere.
Who wants to summarize A Christmas Memory by Truman Capote in, like, let's say 3 sentences?
Oh, I've never read it.
I read it. I read it a couple nights ago.
Oh, it's
We all read it,
terrific.
Ed. We all read it before this filming. You know that.
You
I
had
didn't know
you
there
had
was
homework.
reading in advance.
Pop quiz.
Is the
Yeah,
math?
it's terrific. It's about, essentially, it's a young Truman Capote who has been dealt off to relatives. He's unwanted. And his only friend is this Sook. and she's Bets. But
She's also much, much older. She's
yeah, oh yeah, she's like 70 or something, but she's.
Which is not old.
Oh,
Not
well,
old at all.
not that now that I approach 70,
Given
I
everything
can
she
see
did
how
in the
young
story,
she
she's
really
not
is.
old.
I see.
But, and they pal around together, and they're having a wonderful time, and they're making fruitcake. And then the relatives come down and yell at them, and never specifically say why they yelled at, they made a mess.
Well, they
or
got
something.
drunk.
Oh, that's right, they were drinking brandy.
The child was
Yeah.
drinking,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
And then they went out to, on the way to making the fruitcakes, they go to different places, and they go to Ha Ha Jones, one of the greatest characters in all of literature. Ha Ha Jones has never smiled in his life. And he owns a tavern, which is a ramshackle old junk place along the river on stilts. And they sneak up and what do you want? They buy the brandy. Or, I
But
think
how
it's
does, so
hooch.
I guess the point
It's
is,
hooch.
how does that connect to the story?
Exactly right.
It doesn't.
That's what I'm
Because
saying.
I read that story.
But you want a
and I didn't-
synopsis? Give me a
No, I
synopsis.
read, I know, I didn't want to pull away too much. But, but I mean, I read that story too. I read it at midnight on my iPhone the other day.
Oh, you can't do that.
I know. So maybe I didn't like
Do
give
read
as
it with a
much
cup of
to
tea.
that when I was reading the Truman Capote, but I still didn't see like this big thing reference to fruitcake
No.
in that
Yeah,
story. So
why is that?
I
in
didn't
Well-
know how this could even build upon that story.
Exactly. When you say Sook, Truman Capote, and fruitcake, that's the only reference. There's a triangulation there,
Yeah.
and it has to lead back to the original story.
Yeah.
And right now, at this point, there's
Yeah.
no
Strong
indication
enough
it's going
connection,
there.
Right.
yes.
I mean, I liked it I liked the back and forth
Yes,
between
the back and
Linda
forth was
and the I character. Although I have
Yes,
to
the
say that
narrator
at
who's
several
nameless.
points, I couldn't tell who was talking. So
Ah.
you really have to put in some more tags. You know, Linda said, I said, and stuff.
Or
like
have
that.
Linda address her so we have her name and we know that
Yeah,
Linda's
yeah,
speaking
yeah,
to
that would
her.
be
Yes,
nice.
yes.
And also, you know, there are things I don't know in here that I feel like I need to be told at some point. Like, who is Wally, and where is
Linda's husband.
his home?
Yeah, I assume this
Linda's
was his
husband.
I assume,
Yes.
but we're not told that.
Yes.
And then there's a very odd thing. I mean, so the first intimation that I have that this takes place on Halloween is when they're talking about Wally sitting at home waiting for trick-or-treaters. That's on page 2. So we finally know.
Oh, no,
like,
she brought retro candy and we're talking about goodie bags. Oh, the candy could be anything.
But
You're right,
that's-
Ed. You're
Retro
right.
candy,
You're
yeah.
right.
I
You're
don't
right.
see that as an indication that it's Halloween.
You're right.
I like the phrase retro candy, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good name for a band. Retro.
Retro candy, yeah.
And by the way, you know how they're talking about the aunt's recipes? Well,
Yes!
it was the person, whoever is not Linda, who's the main character? Do we know the main character's
narrator.
name?
No, we don't.
Unnamed
Okay,
narrator.
so the main character at the very beginning says that she's making one of Truman Capote's aunt's recipes, and then at the bottom of page 2, she says, and
Cousin.
just for the
I
record,
caught
it
that.
wasn't his aunt's recipe, it was
Yeah.
his cousin's
Yes,
Sook's
but
recipe.
she herself had
but
said,
she
I
had
know,
She's the
that
one who
drove me
said-
crazy.
yeah,
So
right.
things like that,
Yeah.
that's why it's
And
good
also,
when
like
someone
on the
else
top of
reads your
page 5,
Yes.
work, because then they'll catch mistakes like that.
Top page
Yeah.
5, yes.
Linda handed me some little cotton bags stamped with ghosts and pumpkins. Little cotton bags?
Yes, yes. Strange in
What?
this day and age, yes.
Well, with Halloween now, some
Goodie bags.
places, like, my kids got like little bags with like Play-Doh and
Who has
candies.
time
Yeah,
to
but
do
cotton?
that, by the way?
You.
They were
No,
nice.
not
They were,
me.
I'm like, wow, like, let's
That's
go
the
back
bag.
to that house. It was
Yes.
like, it wasn't
Okay.
just like, a small Kit Kat.
Yes.
People, like, go big.
Yeah.
They did.
And it was really nice. So
I
that's
had-
so when she did, I'm like, wow,
I had no
she's-
idea.
she's a good
Little
Halloween
cotton
house.
bags.
That's right.
Yeah, but
That's
they're
how they
obviously
do
not
that.
putting much care into this. I mean, they're
They're drinking
they're
too
getting
much.
drunk and they're putting the
Yes.
candy corn
Yes.
in
Like,
the
like,
fruitcake,
like,
you know?
That
So
sounds good.
I was confused, like, why was the recipe disappearing? How could she walk down a hall thinking that she had
Yes.
the paper in her hand and raise her hand and the paper's gone?
or
And
was
then-
she just goofing
and
on
then
her?
they just
No, but then her sister said, oh, that happened to me, or, oh, I totally understand.
yeah, like
as
the
if it's
recipe keeps
natural.
So you think she
disappearing.
actually printed it?
Yes.
See, I
That's
thought she
all
was goofing on her. I
Oh,
thought she came in and
no,
said,
no.
here's your recipe, you're stealing it off the internet, I'm not gonna print it out
no.
for
Oh,
you.
that
I
would
didn't
have been
see
good.
that.
I don't think that's
Oh,
what
well.
happened, but.
Do you know what I liked?
There's a lot of
Bottom of
confusion
page,
here.
Yeah.
bottom of page 4, there's a really
There is a lot of
clever
confusion.
phrase. They gave you a check plus. The question hung in the air between us like a cartoon thought bubble.
That was good.
I like
Yeah,
that.
I
I
like
really
that.
like that.
I love the first line. I thought the first line was, until that moment, I have been hoping my sister would pack up her retro candy and leave.
But
I love that.
Oh,
That's
hostility.
nice.
Great first
Start out with
line.
hostility.
No, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
But what is the ivory press to sigh? I want to know,
Yeah, get
is
rid
this
of
the
that.
start? Why?
Yeah.
What precedes this? Was there a comment? Was there an action? I like the way Jen
She
just
doesn't
started
even need
it.
that. Actually,
Okay,
yes.
let me ask a
Yes.
question here. Now, there's obviously tension between the sisters.
There's tension among us.
And we have no idea
Yes.
why, okay?
Right.
All right, women.
There's always
Yes.
tension
Is-
between
Yes.
Is there,
sisters.
is
Man,
there always
That's
tension
just-
between
Yes.
Sorry,
sisters?
Judy.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, not that
Seth
tension.
Meyers.
So that's a
But-
given?
It's
Seth-
not a gi-
Seth
no,
Meyers.
I
Disagree.
She says no,
No,
okay?
I mean,
You say yes?
For me, all right, for me, that even though my sister and I get along, we have our moments, and because we have our moments, when I read a story about two sisters and they're having a moment, I immediately get it.
Seth
So-
Meyers, Steve and I went to see him in a concert and doing a show, and he had this wonderful description of his wife and her sister. And he said his wife asked his sister, "Did you borrow my sweater?" And the response was, "Nobody ever liked you in high school." And that is so sisterly. What? Nobody ever liked you in high school because you didn't want to discuss the borrowed sweater.
Right.
That is so.
So
Yes,
maybe it's-
yes, there's tension.
But-
Is that the story, though?
No, like, the bottom line with the story for me is, I think the writing's good.
Yeah,
And
the writing is
the
good. The
writing's
voice is
good.
lovely.
The voice is good. You've got a good thing
Rapport,
going rapport
yes.
between the two sisters. But when you're trying to introduce mystery into it, it's not working for me. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know who it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
I don't know where
I don't
it's
know
going.
the choice
So
purpose.
can
The purpose.
someone here?
It's not intriguing. It's confusing.
Right.
Yes.
Can someone here suggest a different way of doing it to help the author with this?
Hmm.
But I don't know what she's going
Yeah,
after.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
We don't know where it's
Right.
I
going.
don't know.
I would love
Like
it.
her angle.
Is it Sook's ghost being channeled, like a Sook taking her over, and that's why she's losing time? So without knowing what she's trying to do, it's difficult for me to make a suggestion. I think she just needs to kind of get rid of the confusion. Why?
Yes.
Why the lost time? Why the rush to make the fruitcakes? What's the obsession with the fruitcakes?
Now, would it be-
Unless she looked out the window and said,
Right.
"Oh, it's fruitcake weather," you know, like Sook says in
Yeah.
the
Yes.
Right.
story.
But it's
Right.
not.
I don't
But
think
that was
fruitcake for
November. This
Halloween.
isn't pre-Christmas. It is Halloween. This is set at Halloween.
And
Yeah.
that's
that
okay.
timely
It
doesn't
could be
work.
that her fruitcake weather is November, and that's okay. Is October, and that's
Yeah.
okay. But
Yeah, there
Is it
are
okay to
mysteries
make
to
a
be
reference
cleared up
like
here.
that to a story like by Truman
Oh,
Capote?
I love
mean, I've
allusions, yes.
I've obviously heard of the writer, but I hadn't read that story. So, can you write this assuming that all of the audience has read the story, or do you need to somehow
It's
sum it
a,
up?
it's a,
You
into-
better
cl-
not.
well, but it's,
I didn't.
No.
it's a
I didn't
classical,
Had you
every
never heard it?
textbook,
I had
English literature textbook has this story in
But
it.
even if you hadn't read it, I did read it, and this still didn't make sense to me, right? So
Yes.
I think you can still write a story that alludes to another story and still be able to enjoy that story. But I don't. She didn't nail it
It
here.
shouldn't be essential.
Right.
Right.
It
Right.
sh- Right.
So somehow you've got to
It has to
refer
be
back to
standalone.
She
where
can,
it's
she can
Right.
throw
coming
little
from.
tidbits of what happened in the story,
It's a
just to
little
give
structure.
the.
Thank you
to
for that
ground.
segue. May I discuss little tidbits and grinding? There's
Please do.
blood. There are drops of blood.
That's
There are
hilarious.
Oh, God.
splinters from a wooden spoon. Doesn't she scrap the batter?
No.
Doesn't she worry about a
Mix it in.
splinter?
I love
Oh,
that
my
part because
word.
she's feverishly
Oh,
like,
my
and what
word.
is the green stuff?
Oh,
Like, you know,
what
what
is the green
what
stuff?
is the green stuff?
It's
you
almost
know?
like the blood was meant to go in,
Uh-huh.
right?
I'm
I
throwing
bet.
the yellow flag for piling on. Okay.
I know. I think
We're
that
piling on.
we're good.
Okay.
We're macerating.
All
really.
right, so
The
let me
writing
try
is
to
good.
summarize here.
Yeah, the
and
writing,
then-
the
Yeah,
writing
the
is
dialogue,
good.
Writing's
And the
very
dialogue is
good.
good.
The
dialogue's
interaction is good.
Needs a plot.
Those lines with the cake are fabulous.
Yeah, fantastic.
So just weave something in with what's really going on with this mystery. Is she thinking back to something she read, and all of a sudden it's coming true? So,
So-
Coming Truman.
oh gosh, that was actually a good
Capote.
one.
Thank you.
Oh,
Oh, and
Anything
the
else?
others aren't?
No, they are.
I need
Okay.
Alka-Seltzer after this.
All right. So thank you so much for submitting, and please walk away with great writing. And I can't read Ray's name on screen. Thank you for joining us today for this episode of Writers Infusion, and we'll see you next time. So keep writing.
Ray, say that aloud, please.
Aleister Crowley's Devil's Food Cake.
What does that got to
is
do
that
with
another
anything?
story?
No, I
Is that a
just think
recipe?
that if you're going to introduce something
There you
that's
go.
meant to
Thank you.
Time for
And if
lunch.
you say just Dell, he doesn't.